All right, everybody, welcome back to episode 31's after show. Talking about mages. Talking about mages. What are you guys laughing at? Chat room? What's going on?
Chat room.
Is it?
Sorry.
What happened? What did I
Chat's
miss?
awesome today. Thanks so much, you guys, for joining us. We've had a really great show with everyone.
Yep. Been a lot of fun. And if you're, again, this goes to our YouTube or iTunes or Stitcher listeners. If you can't watch the show live, you should. But if you can't just because of work or whatever, then it's okay. That's why we put it up on VODs and stuff. But if you're only watching us on YouTube and you can watch the show live, you might as well just come back. So, yeah. So nothing really came in on Twitter, and the big question that we had came in on the email actually was answered during the show, what came in from Hyber. So, what do you guys want to know?
Here we go. Here's a great question out of chat from N. Crossy. When you guys use Living Bomb, do you actively watch busts to snapshot the damage, or do you just place it on rotation?
Personally, I genuinely look to. You obviously want to snapshot it. It's obviously a big goal. I mean, particularly as Arcane, it can crit for like 600k, and for a 12-second dot, it's pretty big. But the one thing I try to avoid doing, if I possibly can, is refreshing it early. I don't like refreshing it early because you do lose the explosion. It's a minimal DPS loss, but I mean, ideally you want to try and make your bombs as strong as possible, and that's what you should go with as your default, and then work in sort of, not clipping the explosion later on, pretty much.
Fair enough. Anything on that, Vykina, or is that about it?
I think in particular that's more arcane based, sort of. I mean, as fire, I mean, you don't really care. You just want to keep it up and refresh either after it's fallen off or between the last tick, pretty much.
Mm-hmm. Well, the Hyber has a follow-up question. Do you ever refresh bombs mid-cycle due to the proc of a trinket?
Personally, not at all for any spec.
Nether Tempest I would. Living Bomb,
Yeah.
probably not.
Okay.
Nether Tempest definitely.
I see.
Okay.
Okay, well, I have another question. We can move right along because chat gave us a couple for this moment. From Undead Target, he says that he's playing a Warlock and he can easily swap between specs, but it's less. His understanding is that it's harder to do that as Mage because the stat priorities are completely different. Is that a thing that you think should change for 6.0, or do you all think it's fine and you just need to pick the right spec for the tier, basically?
I think it's not. I think it's going to be not as bad next year because of all the stat changes. So obviously there won't be reforging or anything like that. You don't really have to put too much effort into what gear you're going for. You don't have to worry about hit caps. So I don't think it's too bad if crit is best for fire and mastery is best for arcane, because although you'll have to gather more gear to play the other specs, it's not as bad as it is now, where you need to completely reforge, change all your gems to be able to play it. But at the minute, yeah, it is quite frustrating because obviously each spec has a completely different best main stat and different stat priorities that you want to go for. So it is a bit of a problem now, but I think it'll be a lot lesser in Warlords of Draenor, to be honest.
Yeah. Like Zandy asks, I guess, are there like really big breakpoints or like levels that you guys go to with your stats with any of the mage specs, or you just kind of stack whatever? Like for Frost, like is Frost mastery, or is it more haste, or like what is that doing right now? Because the question that he asked was, have you guys tried out going crit haste to 10 to 1-1 and then mastery for fire, like or mastery over haste? Like which do you go? How does that? Is there big differences in the stat swings, or?
Well, for fire at least, you really don't care about any sort of breakpoint, especially if you have the 2-piece bonus from this tier, which is basically every time you pyroblast, you get 750 haste and it stacks 5 times. So that along with the meta gem kind of throws any sort of breakpoints out the window for fire. For Frost, at least, there's a few different builds that you can go for with. Like varying haste breakpoints before you then start stacking mastery. I'm not too sure for arcane, at least. Maybe Cycobi can give some feedback on that, but at least for arcane, I don't really tend to go for any haste breakpoint there either. I mean, if I'm close to 1, then I'll probably sacrifice some mastery to go for it. But other than that, I don't really aim for haste caps too much anymore.
Following on from that, Arcane, you don't really aim for breakpoints anymore. You used to in Throne of Thunder, but not so much anymore. I mean, there's just so much secondary stats in general on gear right now that you don't need to sort of say, I need to get this point and then go all out mastery. It's no longer as important. I mean, if you are going to aim for a cap, you go for 9-7-6-2 haste. And then after that, you just go all out mastery. But I mean, once you get to about 550 item level, or maybe even a bit lower, you'll be easily hitting that and it won't really make a difference. For Frost, it's a bit different. Actually, there's a cap. I think the exact number is 14,264.
Off the top of your head, just like that,
It's
huh? Yeah.
14,242.
There you go. It's been
14,242.
corrected for me. Yeah, and then you go all out mastery pretty much from there. If you're absolutely min-maxing Frost and you have low latency and high reaction speeds, you can go all out haste. But you'd have to react to brain freeze procs obscenely fast. I mean, the example that was given to me is a guy had 4 brain freeze procs in the space of half a second. And obviously, you can't react that fast. So it is high level gameplay for Frost if you're wanting to do that. So the easier route to go for Frost is just to go for the 14,000 odd breakpoint and then go for mastery.
Well, I have kind of a follow-up question there. Actually, there are a bunch of questions with regard to the stats that you guys are talking about. How does that affect gear? The Hyber asks, what about carrying multiple sets? Do you go for gear that has a good middle ground, haste mastery, and then you have an easier time swapping and then just spending gold to go Frost or Arcane? Or do you gather sets for each one individually? Because all these stats that you guys are talking about, I mean, you have to find them on gear somehow.
For me, at least, I tend to have a fire set which is obviously completely crit and haste built around, and then I also have like an Arcane and Frost set as well because they do kind of use similar stats, so it's kind of easy to use the same set for both for Frost and Arcane. So that's how I go about it at least.
So you do carry multiple sets then?
Yeah. I've got one for fire and then one for Arcane and Frost.
I see. Here, I thought the pure classes never had to do that.
Yeah,
Clearly, I was wrong.
Interesting.
How about
It's
you,
just
Sai?
because it's the same for me. I have one for fire and then one for Arcane Frost. It's because Arcane and Frost both share haste and mastery as their 2 best stats in different orders, but you can change that a lot with gemming and reforging. So those 2 are actually quite easy to change between each other. But fire, you have crit and haste. So whilst you might have a decent amount of haste on your Frost or Arcane gear, you won't necessarily have as not quite enough, but just as much crit as you'd want. As I said, earlier in the main show, for it to play smoothly. And so, yeah, for that reason, I also carry 2 sets, and I think most mages will probably carry 2 sets, which is frustrating, but oh well.
Oh well, most of us know what it's like to carry multiple sets around. Just generally, we do it for different roles.
Used to, yeah. I mean, I used to be a druid, so I used to carry 17. Exactly.
I have a ret set, I have a tank set, I have multiple helms because I do some challenge modes, and I've been trying to keep around a challenge mode set of gear for my tank set as well. So I have bags and bags full of gear.
Yeah.
But it's nice to hear that other people have the same problems.
So here's a good question. Before we go back to the chat room, this came in from Manny, Twisting Nether EU on the emails. Are there any specific Mage add-ons people should take a look at, or ones that maybe you use
Ooh,
that
that's
you
a good one.
couldn't live without?
There's 2 for me at least, definitely.
Okay.
The first is, well, not so much anymore, but I still like to use it for fire, which is Combustion Helper. I've edited it a bit because obviously it's only your ignite now, but I still like to use Combustion Helper just because it's probably the fastest and easiest way just to see what your current ignite is, and it's also got some of the cool features as well, like if you lost a hot streak and other stuff like that, you can get some chat warnings for that. And then also for Arcane, I use an add-on called Player Mana Percent, which shows Your exact mana percentage with like 2 decimal places as well, which I find a lot more useful to see it, to see it as a number rather than as a bar or anything like that. So they're pretty much the two that I couldn't play without at the minute.
Okay.
How about you, Sai?
Yeah.
The one add-on which I can no longer play without is Weak Warriors. It just does absolutely everything you'd want it to, including tracking, ignite, or your player mana percentage, and stuff like that. I mean, obviously just play whatever or go with whatever you prefer. But for me, it's definitely doing everything through Weak Warriors. It's just such a good add-on in general.
Yeah, that's definitely understandable. And actually, since you talk about mana percentage, Alarinth in chat just asked right now, what elements do you feel are most important to see? I would guess that mana percentage is pretty critical for at least Arcane. How do you track that, and is that the only thing that is most critical to watch?
I think when you're talking about a caster-based UI, first and foremost, you need to be able to see your feet. And so you have to plan your UI around your feet.
Not just for casters. I'm pretty sure that's important for everyone, because as melee, you kind of want to see your
melee
feet
can
too.
stand behind the boss, and they just tunnel the boss. No, I mean from an arcane specific point of view, mana is the most important thing you have to keep track of. As well as that, I personally track my charges and the timer left on my charges, and then all my cooldowns and my trinket procs. Those are going to be for any class spec combo that you play. They're going to be the main things you want to watch out for, and it's no different for Arcane.
I see. Anything specific to add to that, Vykina?
Not really. I mean, obviously there's, like Cycobi just said, there's the pretty general add-ons that almost any DPS is using now, like Weak Warriors, Tell Me When, and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty much it.
Definitely
Okay.
think there was more in chat. Let me try to find something.
I have a question from Schmitz, and I'm not sure how much of this question is serious, but he says, oh, I see that one's in here to troll you, Bay. It's okay, I'll read his whole question then.
Great.
I have a question for the mages. If you had to choose to duel an Enhancement Shaman and a Ret Paladin, which one would you choose? Also, why do people who play Enhancement Shamans smell so bad?
Wow.
Oh wow, shots fired.
Wow.
Be careful how you answer this one, guys.
Wow.
I think I'd personally actually go for the Retribution Paladin over the Enhancement Shaman. Because as a mage, a lot of your buffs are purgeable. And Retributions don't have that purge.
Oh,
So,
see? There you go.
yeah.
Yeah, I think I'd agree pretty much. Can you still spell steal wings?
Pretty
Yes,
sure you
you
can.
can.
Yeah, I'm
You
fair.
can,
I'm
yes.
quite
Okay,
sure.
yeah.
There you go.
Then that's my choice.
Wow. I guess I'm just the chosen target.
And
I suppose we'll just leave the question of why Enhancement Shamans smell so bad to Bay on a future episode to explain it.
Apparently, yeah. I don't know.
Here's a real
Terrible.
question from Turkey Burger. What do you guys think of the 2-piece versus the 4-piece as Arcane? I suppose you could expand that to every spec, but you can talk a little about your preferences.
Sure.
This is like the question of all questions, really.
Yeah, pretty
So
much.
I'll let Cycobi have a go at it.
Oh,
It's I want to say it's down to personal choice because it's the easiest option, but your highest, it depends what you're trying to go for. If you're going to go for overall DPS, as in scumbagging, Skada, all that kind of stuff, you don't want to take your 4 set. You want to take your 2 set, and you want to get your 3 Warforged off pieces, and then Nether Tempest your face off, pretty much. But the highest potential for single target, so say Iron Juggernaut as an example, is going to be your 4th piece, because having extra arcane missiles allows you to manage your mana so much better. Personally, what I'm aiming through is I'm aiming to get the 3 Warforged off pieces, but for Iron Juggernaut and Iron Juggernaut alone, I will use my 4 piece. I'm currently using the 4 piece though. You'll still get good DPS either way, you go. It's just the potential for single targets higher with 4 piece, and the potential for AoE is much higher with Warforged off pieces.
Interesting. Yeah, that's been a question a lot of people have asked before too, is that because of the onset of Warforging eye level being higher than sets, if people have weak set bonuses, would people rather keep the 2-piece than go 3 Warforged? Yeah. Every class has a different take on that, yeah.
To be honest,
more
it's
interesting
not.
when there's actually a choice.
Oh.
It's not really that the 4-piece is weak. It's more that the actual stats on the 2 pieces are weak for Arcane.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Pretty much.
Basically, all of the pieces you will replace with Warforge have like crit and haste as Arcane, and obviously you want to maximize on mastery. So that's probably the biggest reason why you'd rather go for Warforge in some situations.
Okay.
I mean, the 4-piece is actually incredibly strong. I can remember seeing it on PTR and actually getting really, really happy because it was sort of, it's a flashback to the Scorch Weaving, except instead of Scorch, you now have more arcane missiles because of the procs and whatnot coming in. And you also had the reward from the 2-piece where by having more missiles, you'd be using less mana on your arcane blast, so you could stay at max stacks for absolutely ages. And I think the longest I've seen in any log is someone staying at 4 stacks this tier for about a minute, which is just it's incredible, like the potential that the 4-set brings.
Wow.
It's just that the stats on the 4-set are absolutely horrible for arcane, so that's why Warforged is a very, very viable alternative.
So I've got 2 real quick. I'll do a fun one first and do a serious one. Craftful asks, which spec would you say is most viable for Brawlers Guild? Of course, if you've ever done it before. You can pull a Brutal and be like, what's the Brawlers Guild? What are challenge modes?
Yeah, someone actually asked about challenge modes earlier, so you can answer it with regard to that too. Totally different questions though, because the challenge modes scale you down.
For challenge modes, at least 100% you want to go Frost.
Okay.
Just
is
because
that for control, or just because of stats at that level, or?
It's just because of how the specs work at that level. I mean, at that level, fire is completely unplayable, and Arcane doesn't really have enough mastery to sort of have the power behind it, whereas Frost is. Frost has always really been a spec that's really shone at like lower eye levels. So.
Okay.
Okay.
Let me see.
And in terms of Brawlers Guild, I mean, it doesn't really matter too much. I'd probably go for something with decent mobility, so maybe not Arcane. But at least personally, I did it all as Frost and Fire.
Little robot-y there.
Little robot-y, yeah. A little bit of lag there. I don't know what happened. Yeah, it's all
It's our
right.
bias
It's
against
fine.
top guilds, clearly.
Is it fine now? Or?
Oh no, you sound much better now.
What did you do? Yeah, it's fine. Yep. Vykina
Anything to add there,
Cylon.
Sai?
I'd say personally, like another reason why Frost is so strong for challenge modes particularly is because you can abuse your shatter quite a lot for the AoE packs with Frost Bomb.
Oh.
And because it's actually a spec that scales incredibly well with intellect at all levels of gear, you can just jump your intellect where it's a lot stronger at that item level because you're getting less stats, and so as a result you can get ridiculous numbers with it. But it's mainly through shatter abuse and just timing your shatters with your Frost Bombs and your improved gun of colds. And I personally disagree with Vykina with Brawlers Guild. I prefer killing everything before it can even do anything, so I go Arcane.
You go Arcane?
Yeah.
Well, you know, that's
Yeah.
that's one way to do it. I guess it goes to show that you can just play whichever spec you're most comfortable with and have success in something like
Indeed.
Brawlers.
I don't even know
Indeed,
the
yeah.
last time I played Brawlers Guild. I think I'm only like rank 8. Terrible.
Whereas with challenge modes, because of the scale down, I can see how there would be a clear right answer if
Based
fire doesn't
on-
if fire doesn't function and if Arcane doesn't have enough mastery to work.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I did my first challenge mode group with a mage in my group, and I remember him being pretty useful. So part of that question was, are mages even viable for challenge modes? And I'm like, well, everything's viable for challenge modes. They're not that hard. But
So this came in. I didn't even think about this making the show notes. I kind of, you guys didn't help me with this, but so mages have 3 armors, right? And we didn't even talk about. So Dazred brings up, isn't frost armor better than mage armor for arcane on pure single target? And I guess we didn't bring up like when would you use different armors? Like, do they kind of go with their own spec, like frost, mage and molten, or do you kind of interchange them?
Mostly they kind of stick to the same spec. The only real times you go away from that was in front of Thunderous Fire, it was worth doing your opener with Mage Armor when Combust did a lot more damage. And that way you get it, because you already have such a huge chance to crit on the pull. So you'd rather have the Mastery to get a huge Ignite on the pull, and then you'd switch back to Molten Armor for the crit consistency later on. In terms of Arcane though, supposedly, because basically with Molten and Mage Armor, they both give a passive 3k stats, whereas Frost Armor gives a percentage based. So once you start getting geared, then you start actually getting more stats out of the Frost Armor than Mage Armor. So on single target as Arcane, if the fight is quite a decent length, then Frost Armor is probably slightly better than the Mage Armor. We were actually talking about this a bit the other day. I don't know if Cycobi wants to say anything about it.
I mean, sort of the maths behind it is actually literally simply that on single target, haste is more valuable. It's not more valuable than mastery, but it's more valuable than before because you're not, just doing flat out damage. It's also the speed of the cast and the speed of your mana regen that comes into it. And so as a result, haste is almost equal with mastery. And as Vykina pointed out, because Frost Armor scales multiplicatively with stats, you basically just get more stats, which makes it better to use for pure single target. But I mean, if it's going to be a short fight, so like say top guild's now killing Heroica and Juggernaut in like 3.5 minutes, give or take.
Yeah.
You're still better off with Mage Armor because you'll just get such a bigger burst on the pull that'll matter so much more.
Okay.
Well, I have another question for you guys that's actually come up from several people in chat. Stressball says, what do you guys think about cancel aura macros for altar time? What procs inside altar would warrant canceling, and how long do you fish before starting altar? And Dark Genjuro said one of the same things. Is it better to wait for a trinket meta to proc before altar time as opposed to using it on CD? So I guess those questions are fairly similar. Maybe you want to talk a little bit specifically about what procs alter your use of altar time.
Yeah.
At least from a survival and defensive standpoint, if you consider yourself a serious player, you should really have altar time cancel aura macro, because there are some situations where, if you can't cancel your altar time, you're likely going to wipe the red. A good example was the lightning fixate on Jinrock. I've seen quite a few mages on streams and even in the method raids where they've gone in the pool, they've used altar time and then got the fixate, and they start running out. They start running out the pool, and then obviously they get teleported back on top of it, and then it's a wipe. So I think it's quite important to have that bound, just to prevent stuff like that. In terms of DPS, though, I mean, you're pretty much using. You can pretty much confirm almost that you're going to get RPPM procs on the pull. I think that's a pretty huge chance now. At least when you're pulling a boss that you've had some downtime between, it's pretty likely that you're going to get all of your RPPM straight away. So at the minute, all you really want to wait for is your Immersius Trinket, to be honest, before you alter time. And then in terms of later on in the fight, like your second alter time usage, if Trinket procs inside there, it really depends on where the Trinket procs inside your alter time to if it's worth it. For fire, at least, if you get a Trinket proc towards the end of your alter time, then it's worth actually completely cancelling it to keep your Trinket proc. But if it procced pretty much as soon as you went into alter time, then it's not worth cancelling it, because then obviously you're only really gaining 4 seconds from it anyway. To be honest, I'm not too sure about that as Arcane. I don't really think it is worth cancelling it, just because of the sort of procs that you have inside alter time, because Arcane is a lot more dependent on alter time, I would say, than Fire is. I don't know if Cycobi wants to add anything to that.
Yeah, anything to add, Cy?
I'd say the only time where I've maybe considered cancel auraing all the time is on pull, and again it revolves around the Immersive Trinket. because it's a 20-second proc as opposed to a 10-second proc. But my opinion on it is that getting maybe 6 seconds out of all your other procs, including, you know, your cooldowns, your other Trinket proc, if you've got a strong Trinket proc, your Jade Spirit, your pot, all that kind of stuff on pull. To me, that's actually more valuable than just your Immersive Trinket. So I've personally never actually cancelled Aura just because my Immersive Trinket procs in the middle. I just write it off as a slightly worse attempt than what my highest potential is. As regards to sort of second alter time and whatnot, I personally don't fish around very long because, as Vykina points out, alter time is actually quite big to arcane DPS. Sorry. And as a result, you don't really want to delay it too much. Obviously, you know, if your ICD trinket's coming off in about, you know, 10 seconds, so yeah, of course you wait. But I mean, because our PPM is so unpredictable and it could proc at any time whatsoever, I personally I prefer using it as close to cooldown as possible. Or maybe, you know, if I've got multiple targets up, so arguably, like, you could not try and cheese an RPPM proc or something by having just more targets taking damage. But I mean, obviously they math to prevent that and whatnot. But you know, whatever makes you feel happier, I guess. But
yeah,
I don't fish for very long because it is such an important cooldown to arcane. I think maybe as fire and maybe as frost, you have a little bit more time where you can try and wait for a Trinket proc to alter time. But another sort of thing is also to know the fight, because if you're only going to get one more alter time off no matter what happens in the fight, then yeah, by all means wait as long as you want for another Trinket proc, because you're only going to get one more use out of it anyway. And technically, so long as you have, you know, about 36 seconds give or take, I mean, if you're not bloodlusting, that's all you need to get your full alter time rotation out.
Gotcha.
So I mean, knowledge of the fight is also pretty critical with alter time as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, Undead Target has posted a question roughly 15 times in chat that I suppose we should probably address. He asks, is there any of the specs of mages that can... Are there any of the specs of mages that can really use the Black Blood stacking trinket to the fullest? Or is the Toxic Totem stronger because of less RNG for the way to get the use for it? Just reading it off there.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Pretty much you want to use Totem as Frost and Arcane, and you use Black Blood as Fire just because of the Open and Combust, and just because you can make a lot more use out of Black Blood for Fire.
Yeah.
Like, once you get Black Blood, you pretty much want to start doing mini pyro chains towards the end of your Black Blood slipped the tongue there. Like, as soon as you get to the end of it, you want to do a little pyro chain when your stacks are high, and
yeah,
you can make a pretty good use of it that way. But for the other two specs, mostly because all of Arcane spells just hit so hard passively, you want to take the Totem,
sure,
just for the multi-strike damage, and as well because you're not really too bothered about, because obviously our dots only last for 12 seconds, so we're not really that bothered about snapshotting them that much, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, pretty much that. I'd say the only time I would maybe consider taking Black Blood as Arcane is for a pure pad scenario with Nether Tempest. But I mean, but 10 seconds is maybe a bit too short because you'll only get one Nether Tempest out, you know, at max stacks, and so it's not really worth it. Back in Throne of Thunder, when you had like the Wushu which was a 20-second proc, so you had 2 seconds of max stacks, and you know, you had basically like 4 seconds of really, really high intellect. That was definitely better for it, but 10 seconds is just a little bit too short to do a lot with for the other two specs outside of fire.
You only get too many. You only get so many procs. You only get too many spellcasts in that window, and
Yeah.
Yep. Well, I think that's about does it. I think we've answered tons of questions from chat room, guys. Thank you very much for asking. Those that sent them in or that put them on Twitter. Twitter's a little less. It depends on the episode. Sometimes we're like, oh, I got questions. But yep, that's why the after show is for. We do want your questions, of course, for shows coming up. So if you have... Oh, that's the wrong overlay. Terrible. If you do have questions for next week's show for Red Paladins, then send them in right now. Over at finalboss.tv or right down below, it says Ask a Boss. And if you have any people, if you want to be a guest on the show, or you know someone that you like to be a good guest on the show, there's also a forum for that as well. So, all that is on the website. But until then, And again, of course, if you haven't already, you can get us on Facebook, Twitter, and you can watch all of our old episodes on YouTube. We're on the table again real quick here. Cycobi, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much. And can I do my shoutouts now? That's all right.
Yes, sir. Go
Yeah,
for
go
it.
ahead.
Okay, shout out to Frantic, first of all. Mainly for being my bro and for being a fucking awesome DK. Apologies for the language, but he deserves it.
That's fine.
Shout out as well to Aurelia for supporting me and just being a great friend as well. And if you want to check out guides for a lot of classes, go to Aurelia Gaming.
Yeah, when's Aurelia
And
coming
then-
on the show?
And then shout outs to my guilds, Amused to Death and Scrub Busters, both amazing guilds. And then final shout out to Relis for being an awesome guild leader for Amused to Death as well.
There you go.
Thank you very much.
That sounds awesome. Awesome stuff. And you're at twitch.tv at Cycobi if you want to watch more of his Mage rating. So, yeah. The Aurelia comment, though, makes me
miss
wonder.
it.
And then, of course, Mr. Vykina from Method. Thank you again for being here, sir.
Yeah, nice to be here.
Yep. It was awesome. And then our co-host of the show, wearing glasses today, Anna, is over on Twitter as well at Annafeel.
Yep, at Annafeel.
And then there's me. I'm over here at twitch.tv, BayTLM. That's where you'll find me outside of raids. But again, next week is going to be Ret Paladins. We'll have the guests updated for you on Facebook and Twitter's next couple of days. And we'll see you in the YouTube comments. See you next week at 1 p.m. PST, 4 p.m. EST, and 10 p.m. CET. Right here on Final Boss. Thank you guys very much for watching. Again, have a fun week at the job. And then trust in the coin for your reset if you're still raiding. And until next week, have a good one, guys. Bye. See ya. Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you.
Bye.